Welcome back to Bazaar, I'm Miko, and today I'll be giving my first impressions on the new Mac set originally revealed by Little Monk. Credits to them and link to their video in the description, please check it out. The long story short with the new Mac set for me is that it largely feels like it's adding stuff to Mac that Mac should have. It's not really a cohesive themed set like a lot of the sets we've seen, and I'm glad to see the new stuff he's getting, fleshing out his transmutation kit. But at the same time, the flying portion of the set, I don't really know if I understand what we're doing here. But I'll figure it out as I play with it. As always, I'm sure there's something going on that I'm just not able to cook with theoretically, and as you play the game more, it'll start to make sense to me. Getting right into it, we have the flying potion. It's a small potion starting tier bronze, 4-second speed, and haste your flying items for 1 second. One item starts flying. How good flying potion is will really come down to how it scales. If it's like runic potion and it scales the ammo, that's not very effective. If it is scaling the number of items that all start flying initially, then that's much more interesting. And if it's scaling the haste value, hopefully it scales something else alongside the haste value. I don't really know how I feel about flying potion just yet, but I do know that if you're building a flying Mac, this is going to fit right in. It's just how it scales, which of these three ones is changing is going to matter a lot to how strong the card really is. Now, getting into why you might care about making your items fly, let's move on to the gravstone. The gravstone is a medium relic property starting silver tier. When you use a potion or a relic, another item starts flying. When you use a flying item, gain 5 regen for the fight. And yeah, sure, in a world with a life conduit, 5 regen's not blowing anyone away, but that's still a very powerful effect for a silver card, as long as you don't directly compare it to life conduit builds. It's also another way to bridge the gap before you find a vial launcher. If you're playing a recycling bin build, if you're trying to go into that, gravstone will be great to do something in the early game. I'm not really sure how I feel about it in general, but again, that comes down to me not really understanding what we're doing flying on Mac. One of the answers might have to do with Orly, better known as Oh Really, the owl meme. He's a small friend, bronze tier start, and when you crit, an item starts flying. Your flying items have plus 20% crit chance. Now, this is inherently kind of an awkward effect because Mac's not great at giving crit as a baseline, but in Mac, with access to Palanquin, Orly seems like he could do something very, very interesting. I could imagine Orly Palanquin being the start to how you get some sort of silly infinite going, and certainly plus 20% crit chance to all your items is not bad. You can assume that if you have Orly, you're probably running a build where he's affecting your whole board, at which point he's probably a better Vanessa's amulet. And while Vanessa has an easier time assembling a crit build, she has no payoff as strong as Palanquin, so it's possible that Orly can do some really, really powerful things. He's also probably going to be very niche no matter what. It's also very worth mentioning that this doesn't say the item that crit starts flying. So if you're running any sort of build with a strength potion and Orly, pretty much immediately your whole build takes flight. So at worst, that's a 2-item combo to get a bunch of early crits and get 50% resistance to slow and freeze and 20% crit chance. That might just be a strong enough package to run universally. That might not be that niche, to be honest. And moving on to our big build around large, the mascot of the set, it's the Sky Terror. It is a gold starting tier large friend weapon dragon. It is a 4-second activation speed, and all it does is start or stop flying. The effect of the card that actually matters is the passive. When this starts flying, burn 15, and this gains 150 damage for the fight. When this stops flying, deal 150 damage, and this gains 15 burn for the fight. So you can look at this as an 8-second speed item that does burn 15, damage 300, and then every time it goes off, it's scaling up 15 burn and 150 damage. Obviously, as a baseline, the Sky Terror is not that impressive. If you're just running this as the card on its own, it's not doing much. But if you have it in a build alongside flying potions, alongside Orly, you're doing things that are constantly giving it flight, and it's not an 8-second cooldown, it's basically a 4-second cooldown. You just need the Sky Terror to stop flying while the rest of the build repeatedly puts flight onto the Sky Terror, then that is a much, much better item. I still don't think it's like that crazy. It's pretty good. Definitely 4 speed, 300 damage, because the first time it attacks, it'll be buffed. 4 speed, 300 damage, 15 burn, and then on the next rotation, 450 damage, 30 burn. Like, it's definitely strong, but I'm not sure how good it'll be late game. It largely depends on what it does when it goes to diamond tier, I would think. I'm not going to speculate about how this will work, but I will say that this is obviously the sort of card where getting off-class stop fly triggers some stealth is going to make the build tremendously better. But there is one major payoff for trying to use all this stuff like Orly and flying potions to get your build flying, and that is the atmospheric sampler. It is a gold starting tier item, a medium vehicle and tech. When you use an enchanted or flying item, charge an enchanted or flying item 1 second. At the start of each fight, another item starts flying, and at the start of each day, get a small reagent. This thing seems crazy to me. This is Pickle's board, except you have to make your items fly, but then it works on any type of item in the game. This thing seems super cracked, and I'm really looking forward to playing with it. I'm assuming that at Diamond, this goes to 2 seconds. What else could it do? Horrifying. This is by far the most hyped thing about it. This is the big reason to care about building up fly stuff early, is so that you can transition into this if you find it. I think Sky Terror is really cool. I want to be in the world where Sky Terror is good. But at 4 seconds, I'm a little bit worried about the guy. And Atmospheric Sampler, on the other hand, I just look at this, I'm like, oh, my whole board is pendulum, do you say? All right, I'm in. It's terrifying. This card's gonna be super, super strong. Maybe I'm overestimating it, but I mean, it's not that hard to get enchanted items in Mac. You don't even have to play a flying build, right? To rein in the hype just a little bit, not that much, just a little bit, Pickle's board is the same as this, and it's super crazy. This is bound by the internal cooldown in a way that Pendulum isn't, right? If your whole board is popping off every second, this is probably not going to be able to charge as quickly as it really should be because of the internal cooldown. That's fine. Charging 2 times, 5 times a second, still incredible, but it is worth noting the internal cooldown will limit how powerful this can be. And speaking of getting enchanted items in Mac, let's go to the second half of the set, which are exclusively new transmute reagents. Starting with the one that's not just a transmute reagent, the Frozen Horror. It's a gold starting tier medium reagent relic, 3-second activation time to freeze 2 items for 1 second, which is a lot, but it has 2 ammo, right? Generally, freeze is broken when it prevents your opponent from playing the game. When freeze delays your opponent in like the form of a diamond icicle, if it delays your opponent at the start of the match for like 5 seconds, it's crazy. But if you're just sort of running a couple of freeze items to slow them down a bit, it's not that busted. I don't think that this is broken. Sure, you put a sapphire on it, it gets a lot scarier. Sure, you boost its ammo or find a powder horn or reload it some other way, it gets scary. But I don't look at this and think, oh boy, Freeze Mac is back, just from the active effect at least. Now, going into the passive effect, when this runs out of ammo, poison both players 100. This is probably just symmetrical. Mac doesn't really cleanse poison at all, so it's probably slightly worse for Mac than it would be for any opponent who has a much higher chance of running a heal card. But no, the main effect this has to care about is when this is transformed, enchant it with Icy if able, meaning that you have a chance of hitting things like Icy Weaselpede, Icy Frost Totem, Icy Blank Slate. That one's a little bit less impressive, to be honest. You also don't have to hit a freeze item, right? You can just hit any medium item that's relatively fast with a good frost enchant length, and that's going to do a ton of work. Being a gold starting item is a real big part of why I'm not super concerned about this card. You're not going to see that many Macs that have found 3 Frozen Horrors, transmuted them all, and is running a 4th one on their board, right? Yeah, there's a nightmare world where this does absolutely deranged things, but that should exist for most good cards, and I think this is probably just barely on the side of healthy freeze. I eagerly await being proven wrong and entering the Ice Mac dominance era again, but I don't think this is broken. I've seen a lot of people be like, what the fuck do you mean freeze 2 for 1? You just reload it. I think it's a lot harder than that to make a good Freeze Mac. I think this is really cool. I think it's going to make Freeze Mac a lot more interesting, and I don't think it's going to break him. Moving on to some more traditional reagents, we have Ionized Lightning. It's a small reagent, bronze starting tier. It gives adjacent items 10% crit chance, and when this is transformed, enchant it with Deadly if able. Now, honestly, what this passive text is matters a lot. I'm not really looking to get a bunch of small deadly items in Mac. This is not a reagent I'm hyped to find. However, if this scales with tier 10, 20, 30, 40, this is the character with Palanquin. I want the actual item of Ionized Lightning if it scales that well, because that allows you to much more aggressively go into Palanquin. Depending on how Ionized Lightning scales with tier, it might actually be very good in Palanquin builds, but regardless, I'm not interested in getting a bunch of deadly enchants. It is, in my opinion, one of the weakest enchants in the game. Moving on to our next reagent, it's the Cloud Wisp, a small reagent starting tier at bronze. Every 5 seconds, haste down to the left of this for 1 second, which unlike Ionized Lightning is just straight up a bad effect. But when this is transformed, enchant it with Turbo if able. Now, honestly, with Cloud Wisp, I'm not super jazzed about this. Generally speaking, using it for haste is going to be way worse than a Smelling Salt setup. Using this to get Turbo enchants, Turbo's really not that crazy of an enchant on most small items in Mac. Obviously, it's very good if you specifically use this with a potion distillery and start rolling until you can hit an energy potion. You can create a setup where you have a high tier energy potion that will just haste you forever. That's all right, but like, Even then, energy potions, what, a 6-second cooldown these days? Hasting your board at 6 seconds? Most people have tried to kill you before then. The game's stupid fast. So I'm, again, not super hyped about this particular enchant. But that turns around with Distilled Sunlight. It is a small reagent starting tier gold. The cooldown to the item to the left of this is reduced by 5%. And when this is transformed, enchant it with shiny if able. Now, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of items where I'm not super excited to do this, but there are also a lot of items where this is completely crazy. A good example would be excavation tools, or literally any fast item if you have a pendulum, right? This is obviously crazy. The ability to get more shiny enchants will always be strong. I don't feel the need to dwell on it beyond that. When you see this, you want to buy it and transform it, and Mac has the economy that'll likely be able to do that by the late game. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of the nonsense we'll get into with reagents and Mac these days. But there is still one more reagent left. For the last item of the set, we have Sky Spirit Ashes. It's a large reagent relic. At the start of each fight, enchant 2 other non-enchanted items for the fight, and when this is transformed, enchant it. Just randomly, anything. For me, I don't think we're very likely to be using Sky Spirit Ashes for that first effect. There's like one situation exactly where I can imagine running it. It's to enable an atmospheric sampler and try to do some sort of infinite loop early before you have the enchants of the way make them start flying. But generally speaking, I can't really imagine ever running this to get 2 random enchants at the cost of 3 port slots. That seems kind of crazy to me. What I can imagine is wanting to transform it for random large golds, but that is kind of a hassle, right? 3 inventory spaces in Mac is a lot. Currently, with no new items for transmuting large items, this looks like you just need to go to Mandala. And in the late game, when you're willing to buy 12 gold large items to gamble, I don't know how often I have 3 inventory spots to hold indefinitely until I find a Mandala, and then I'm willing to give up the hour to go to Mandala over whatever else is competing. That's not always guaranteed either. This is really cool. I hope there's some sort of change in Mac's card pool to enable you to transmute this more effectively, because if Mandala is the only way, this is probably not going to be something I engage with very much at all. But if there are other ways to transmute this, then sign me up, I'm down. That's all it comes down to. I think this is really cool. I want to engage with it. If I have to go to Mandala to do that, I'm not going to. And I hope that there are changes coming with the patch notes to enable us to transmute this more easily. Anyway, that's the roundup for Mac. I'm kind of torn because he has some like really cool stuff like Sky Spirit Ashes and Sky Terror, where I'm not sure how strong they are, but I know I like them. He has some very interesting stuff with Distilled Sunlight and Frozen Horror and Orly. These cards are all really interesting to me, and I'm curious to see what people can cook with them. And then there's one card where I look at this like, but wait, why though? I think this is gonna be really strong. I know it doesn't just say your whole board charges another item 2 seconds every time it goes off. Maybe that's not what it does at Diamond. Like maybe it gets you a second small reagent, right? Maybe it just changes the tier of the reagent. That's true. We don't know that Diamond says 2 seconds right now, and it might not say that. At Gold, only 1 second. I think everyone knows there is a tremendous difference in a Diamond pendulum and a Gold pendulum. If it stays at 1 second at Diamond, this is not a problematic card. If this goes to 2 seconds, this thing is going to be a menace. It might not always be playable. It might be kind of niche, like the way the glider ended up being, where sure, it's completely broken when it's going off, but it doesn't go off that frequently. Maybe atmospheric sampler ends up there. It's harder to activate than I think it is. But God, I look at this and I'm just assuming like, oh, it's going to go to 2 seconds on Diamond and it's going to be a fucking menace. Regardless, if it's broken, it'll be fun to play with for a little while before it gets nerfed. And if it's not broken, then great. I'm glad the game is more balanced. We'll figure out the specifics later today when we get access to the cards and see how they actually upgrade. For now, I'm done. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.